Mark had never believed in ghosts. To him, stories of the paranormal were nothing more than people's overactive imaginations. So, when his friends dared him to spend a night in the abandoned McCreary Mansion, he laughed, barely fazed. The house had been empty for nearly 70 years, left to rot on the edge of town, shrouded in rumors of curses and disappearances. Armed with nothing but his flashlight and the bravado he didn't fully feel, Mark stepped onto the cracked porch, the boards groaning under his weight. He pushed open the door, which swung wide with an unsettling creak that echoed through the empty hallways. He let out a breath and muttered, "Piece of cake." The main hall was surprisingly spacious, filled with dust-laden furniture shrouded in white sheets, like silent ghosts guarding the forgotten memories of the past. Mark clicked on his flashlight and began exploring, the beam slicing through the darkness. As he moved from room to room, he felt the weight of silence pressing down, broken only by the sound of his own breathing. He spent the first hour wandering aimlessly, peeking into empty bedrooms and abandoned studies. It wasn't until he reached the basement stairs that he hesitated. The door to the basement was slightly ajar, and the faint smell of mildew wafted up to meet him. For a moment, he considered skipping it, but curiosity got the best of him. Taking a deep breath, he stepped down the creaky wooden stairs, each one groaning underfoot as if they hadn't been used in years. At the bottom, he found himself in a cramped, damp room filled with old tools, rotting wood, and boxes stacked in forgotten piles. The air was thick, and he had to suppress a cough. Just as he was about to turn back, he noticed a strange outline on the wall, partially hidden by an old wooden cabinet. He shifted the cabinet aside, revealing a small door with a heavy iron handle, its surface scarred and pitted with rust. Intrigued, he pulled on the handle, and with a reluctant groan, the door swung open. He was met with a set of stairs leading even further down, into pitch-black darkness. He felt a chill creep up his spine, a feeling he couldn't quite shake. Still, he told himself he'd come this far. With his flashlight in hand, he began his descent. The deeper he went, the colder it became, the air so thick it felt almost alive. His flashlight beam wavered slightly, and he swore he could hear faint whispers, though he couldn't make out any words. His pulse quickened, but he forced himself onward. At the bottom of the stairs, he found himself in a narrow, stone-walled passageway. Suddenly, his flashlight flickered. He smacked it against his hand, willing it to stay on, and for a moment, it obeyed. But as he took another step forward, it died completely, plunging him into total darkness. Mark's heart pounded as he stood there, listening to the oppressive silence. Then, he heard it, a faint scratching sound, like nails scraping across stone, coming from somewhere down the passageway. He held his breath, paralyzed, straining to hear. The scratching grew louder, closer, followed by a low, guttural whisper. "Why have you come here?" He backed up, pressing himself against the cold wall, his mind racing. He felt for his phone, but as he did, his fingers brushed against something else, something cold, soft, and alive. He recoiled, a jolt of terror shooting through him, but when he looked down, there was nothing there. Another whisper, louder this time, seemed to slither through the darkness. "Stay with us." Mark's courage shattered. He spun around, sprinting back toward the stairs, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He reached the staircase, stumbling up the steps two at a time. But as he neared the top, a powerful force slammed the basement door shut, plunging him into silence once more. He pounded on the door, shouting, but no one was there to hear him. Just then, he felt the temperature drop sharply. Turning around, he saw them, pale figures, barely visible, materializing in the darkness. Their faces were gaunt, eyes hollow, their mouths twisted in silent screams. They hovered at the edges of his vision, slowly closing in, their whispers filling the air. "Stay with us, forever." Desperation flooded him. He yanked at the basement door handle, but it wouldn't budge. He could feel them drawing nearer, a wave of cold pressing against his back, breathing down his neck. Every instinct screamed for him to run, but he had nowhere to go. Heart racing, he turned to face them, raising his arms as if that would somehow protect him. One of the figures stepped forward, a woman with hollow eyes that bored into him. She reached out, her icy hand brushing his cheek. He felt his skin grow numb under her touch, the life draining out of him. But just as he was about to collapse, he remembered the small iron key he'd found on a table in the main hall. He reached into his pocket, fumbling for it. In a last desperate move, he raised the key in front of him, hoping against hope it would work. The woman shrieked, her form dissolving into mist, and the others began to back away, their whispers fading. Taking the chance, Mark threw himself at the door once more. This time, it burst open, and he stumbled out of the basement, slamming the door behind him. His chest heaved as he leaned against it, too terrified to move. When he finally dared to look back, he saw that the basement door had sealed itself shut, as if it had never been opened. Without a second thought, Mark bolted out of the house, his heart pounding all the way to his car. He didn't look back, didn't stop until he was miles away. But even in the safety of his own home that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that he hadn't left that basement alone. The McCreary Mansion remained abandoned, but the townsfolk noticed something strange. Anyone who dared to enter that house would swear they could hear whispers, and sometimes, on cold, quiet nights, they'd see a shadowy figure by the window, a figure who looked just like Mark, his hollow eyes staring out into the darkness, waiting.